Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Our next guests are featured here every month on the third Thursday of the month at the 11 o'clock Central Time hour. Dr. Michele Sherwood is a trained doctor of osteopathy, and Dr. Mark Sherwood is a trained naturopathic doctor. Mark and Michele use an integrated approach that focuses on prevention and lifelong wellness. The Sherwoods have a thriving medical practice, the Functional Medical Institute, and are recognized experts in health and wellness. In their 18 years of practice, they've helped almost 8,000 patients worldwide, including me, with an annual reach of over 1.3 million. Together, they've authored 3 books: Fork Your Diet, which is Master the 4 Fundamentals of Good Health; Surviving the Garden of Eden, Surprising Biblical Insights to Enjoy Optimal Wellness; and The Quest for Wellness, a practical and personal wellness plan for optimum health in your body, mind, emotions, and spirit. You can find out more about them and their practice at fmidr.com. Here to talk about what to eat, when we should eat it, and the impact of our diet on so many different areas. Right now we have Dr. Mark Sherwood with us, and hopefully Dr. Michele will join us if she can. Mark, welcome to your edition of this episode we do every month on wellness and living the life that God designed for you to live. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Rabbi Eric, of course, and we're very honored to be a part of this mission and ministry that we have. My wife will be joining us in the second half of the broadcast. She's taking care of some patients. We're still in the game, and people need to know that. I mean, we're actually seeing people, and we're not just speakers. We're actually still teachers and clinicians, and we're in the trenches. And today is very important because ultimately, if we understand the epigenetic effect, and that's a big word which we'll explain, of nutrition and how the nutrients signal our body to do things, it'll open up a whole new world of possibilities in how we sort of frame our selections in regard to lifestyle.
As your patient, I've been transparent about my journey, where I started out at 204 pounds at the top. I'm now down to 158. At this age, almost 69, metabolically changing. I know many people from COVID are having a struggle with COVID obesity. Yep. This turning to food as a fix, constantly be surrounded by it. They've foregone their exercise because their gym's not open, and they haven't figured out that outdoor walking and there's other things they can do, but the Netflix and the Amazon Primes have all profited and benefited from it, but the human body has suffered in many ways. And people, really, food and the whole area of nutrition is really quite challenging. It's an overemphasized, over-focused, and over-marketed area that does not allow you to settle into an area where you aren't bombarded with influences from the media, of every commercial, of every post, of this Noom, Zoom, boom, room, this additive, this, drop this in your water and watch your fat melt away. It's very confusing, and it's caused me to look at food as a struggle.
Yeah.
Where I don't know. I've stopped liking foods. I don't know what to eat. It's become challenging to make choices. What am I looking for? And if I do it at this time, it's going to cause this effect. If I do it at this time, and I'll give you a perfect example. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter has 190 calories. Okay? It's just regular old Jif, just regular old off the shelf has 190 calories. If I have it in the morning, it has no effect. It's a good source of protein. But if I have 2 tablespoons of peanut butter as a before bedtime food, my scale will go up 1 full pound. Mm-hmm. And it's not, it just happens every now and then. It is absolutely predictable. Now, how can 190 calories transfer into 3,000 calories, but it has some effect on my body either through retention or taking all the other food that I've processed through and processing through the day and having some kind of buffering effect that all of a sudden causes me to gain weight. Now, scales fluctuate, but this has been consistent. I mean, I can give you a study on it, and so I've become almost, better not eat that now because this is going to happen. Better, and it hasn't become pleasurable.
So there's a couple of things to keep in mind, and this is a great eye-opening thing I'm getting ready to say. Our digestion is now being understood with the incredible volume of the trillions of microorganisms that live in us and through us. We're 99% or more identical with our human DNA, but we're 90% different from an intra-individual person with our bacterial DNA. And we have 100 times more bacterial DNA than human DNA. So that tells us we're actually more bugs than we are people. With that said, the bacteria, that's all different, has varying effects on how we process foods. Along those lines, Rabbi Eric, it has been now discovered that the cold calorie science thing has been disproven. And it's disproven because of an example of the way you just said it. 2 tablespoons of Jif peanut butter will not break down or digest or assimilate the same way in 2 different people. So you could have that and it could elevate blood sugar a moderate amount. Somebody else next to you could have that, it could moderate blood sugar 0. So the point being is our whole systems are completely different and they have to be personal, and the personal comes from observation. Now with that said, fascinatingly enough, in your case, as an example, and this probably is happening to a lot of people out there, you have something that you have at night that is typically lower glycemic, meaning a fat, and let's say that you take that in at night and all of a sudden, you wake up with weight gain. You could be driving, insulin up with that, conceivably. Insulin is a fat storing hormone, and that's a fascinating concept. But with this drive of insulin being personal and individualized, it's hard to correlate that with individual foods as a general statement. And so that's the one part I want people to know. So you have to look at the personal, individual responsiveness to that. The other side of the coin is, we all need to understand, like you just said, the difficulty and challenge that food is these days. And it's that way because the marketers, want to confuse you. They want to overwhelm you. And when they do, and this is just elementary, when they do and they overwhelm you, it's like choice overload. And then it's like going in the store and trying to shop for a vitamin D. And there's 50 vitamin Ds there. You're just like, I'm done. I'm overwhelmed. Let me grab one and get out of here because the overload of that is too stressful. And so therefore we go with the least common denominator, the fastest thing, just to get out of there and get the stress down. And that least common variable or least common denominator is going to be typically these things that were never food. And the fascinating thing about that is it drives us down a further path of disastrous behavior, because some of these things that we put in our bodies, they're non-nutritious. They're anti-nutrients. They have zero nutritional value. They may have, again, calories, but I've already stated that calories is not the same for everybody else. So it's a whole Pandora's box. And if I can encourage folks that are listening with this concept, it's that just relax and stop listening to the media. Learn to eat intuitively. And what I mean by that is just listen inside you, of what you're supposed to eat. Sometimes you're going to be hungry, sometimes you're not. There is nothing wrong with skipping a meal if you're not hungry. And there's nothing wrong with eating, of course, when you are hungry. And so by doing that, you can begin to eat. And just a general fun rule of what we use here to decide whether it's food or not. And this is cool, and I hope people get their pens and write this down. If you can pluck it, pick it, pull it, catch it, or kill it, it's probably food. But if you can't do that, and it doesn't seem that you could ever do that, it probably was never food. And so that's just a fun little thing. And if we just can kind of take the pressure off, I mean, frankly, I've been doing this for 40 years, man. It's a long time. And I think we were talking in the last program, how do you motivate yourself? Well, the same is true with food for us, Rabbi Eric. I mean, I have no idea how many calories I eat in the daytime. I don't even think about it. It's just when I'm hungry, I eat, and when I'm not, I don't worry about it. And taking that burden off like that has been truly freeing. Now, I will follow those rules. I'll eat the real food, and I'll avoid the things that are non-foods or anti-foods. And that's how we live. And the body has this unique ability that's God-given, God-made, God-granted by His grace to correct, rebuild, repair, restore. And just like you're a great example of that. The light bulb came on one day and you said, I got to do this. You made it non-negotiable. And your body composition just miraculously began to normalize. And now you're a great example of that. Great body composition. And it just did it. Well, that's God's design. It's supposed to just do it. Carrying excess fat tissue on our frame is abnormal. It's not optimal, and it's certainly not healthy. So that was a long answer to the scenario, but I hope people get the drift to just relax and do the right things, and the body will respond appropriately.
It's interesting. We're coming into the season of the fall feast of Israel, and the third in that feast is the Feast of Tabernacles. And that's when we talk about the 7 species of Israel. And when we take a look biblically at what they are, it's wheat, barley, grape, fig, pomegranates, olives, the oil, and dates, the honey. And this is done in a wave offering to the Lord as part of the ceremony, but it's a celebration of the fall harvest. And when we take a look at the time of year and we correlate it to what we know Thanksgiving. Well, it's interesting that the things at Thanksgiving, at the first, the Pilgrims, the Puritans that came in, and these were incorporated into it because they were celebrating this Feast of Tabernacles. It just happened to fall during that period. We've moved it to this November period, but we know it was much more in time in tune with the biblical feast day of celebration. And when you go to Israel, breakfast in Israel is not cereal and milk. It's fish, and it's vegetables, and it's fruits, and it's the species that we talk about here. There's breads, there's cheeses. There are no meats because they don't mix meat and dairy. You get your meat in the evening meal. You get these energy producing to get you sustained through the day foods in your breakfast and looks nothing like what an American breakfast looks like. What we call the breakfast aisle is nothing but sugar and carbohydrates, which has moved me into the protein shake world and chia seeds added to it, and that's become much more enjoyable. But part of the discussion is what to eat and when to eat it.
So when you look at the concept of what to eat, I mean, I think we can, that's a great explanation of the design of the system, what we're supposed to do. So when we wake up, we're supposed to go, run and hunt, gather, that's kind of our genetic evolutionary process, in the sense that I'm not talking about evolution the way it's defined in Darwinism. I'm talking about the microevolution, or the tiny evolution of our genes, which is true. Now, with that said, when we wake up, obviously we're supposed to be moving, and movement is something that requires ATP, which is your universal cellular energy currency, if you will. It's created inside of our cells, inside of an organ called the mitochondria. Well, how do we get energy created in the first place? Well, that comes from the vitamins, the minerals, the fatty acids, the amino acids from food, right? So when we get up, if we're hungry, our meals would conceivably be a little bit bigger in the morning. And like you mentioned, in Israel, I mean, the protein, the good carbohydrates, I'm using that word, really in proper context, of the fruits, the vegetables, the grains that aren't available in America, that are available in the Middle East, that's kind of the concept. So you're going to eat that stuff, and it doesn't translate like immediately into ATP, but it does build the nutrients up in the system so they can do their rapid conversion inside of the physical body. And so, our need, our demand for energy is more during the course of the day. And so that's why, it's all been said, and this is probably, funny, but you'll get it, to have breakfast like a king, to have lunch like a queen, and then dinner like a pauper. And so this pyramid of food, it doesn't need to climb up as we go in the daytime in quantities. It needs to go down, and this is very important. So, if we eat like that, we're going to eat more along the lines of our normal cortisol energy rhythms of our body, the way we're designed. And when we get to the evening time, we don't want to have those higher carbohydrate foods. We want to have more of the proteins and the fatty foods. I mean, probably the greatest example, probably not, apples to apples, but similar, is when the children of Israel were wandering in the desert. The coriander that was given to them, they woke up in the morning. That's more of a carbohydrate kind of concept, right? And then they got the quail in the evening. It's like, what I think that's a good analogy, and I think it's a pattern that is clear that we should mimic in our diet. And if we do that, and go to sleep with, relatively speaking, kind of an empty stomach, we're going to sleep better. We're going to wake up probably with more energy because we're more rested and more focus on what we're supposed to do. And then we're probably going to behave better with not just our own activity, but also our food behavior for the next day.
As we look at things, and you mentioned cortisol, which is that stress hormone that everybody ties to belly fat, that causes, and that belly fat is obvious externally, but what's not obvious is the fats surrounding your organs that are reflected by this. So if you're fit and trim, you probably have much less fat surrounding your organs than if you have a belly.
That's right.
And that's where some of the complications come in, is not from the belly fat itself. It's from the fat surrounding the organs
Yep.
that we really have to be focused on, but you can't see it. And because you can't see it, you don't know what negative impact it's having on kidney function, liver function, heart function, all the major organs of the body that are surrounded by fat and having to labor harder to process because they've got this, they're encapsulated and they're not able to do their jobs. So there are foods which impact that, that are contributing factors to the organ fat, which is very harmful.
This is cortisol belly right here. This is 5 pounds of fat, and it looks like this in the body. The key thing about this is I use this on my desk as a model. Fat tissue is yellow because it has not much blood flow. So in other words, it's hard to break down. And number two, please understand that too much cortisol will drive this, and we can dive into that physiology, I think, in the second half. We probably should, because I want people to get that, right? But at the same time, this is going to hold toxins, because toxins are lipophilic. That means they like to get stored inside the fat tissue. So when you have this VAT, visceral adipose tissue accumulation, you're not only going to feel the weight, but therefore around your organs, you're going to have toxicity potential, which can indeed and does tie to multiple dis-ease processes. So that's a big deal. You know, we always talk about this quarantine 19 or freshman 15. You know, Rabbi Eric, that's not funny. I mean, that's not okay. It's not something to celebrate like in a quirky, comical manner. This is people's lives we're talking about here. And this is the difference between really life and death long term as we begin to age, because the longer you're exposed to toxins, the more effect they're going to have on you towards the negative side, and you can't clear them.
You know, we take a look at the progression of age, and there is a physiological response change to the same stimuli as you progress in age. So
Yes.
what you could eat at 18 and what you can eat at 70, you can't have the same diet without it having a different effect. And so part of this is that the physiological responses, there's also not just what you eat and when you eat it, but the impact of the combination of what and when. There's benefits and there's negative effects from timing and the combination of timing and content that affect sleep. Now, I've shared with you before, for whatever reason, I can't figure out whether or not it was being sent to bed and as punishment and not getting dinner. I don't know. I cannot fall asleep on an empty stomach, so I've got to have a few crackers or something. Otherwise, I stay awake. It's been that way since I can remember. So I've had to search for foods that don't interfere with my sleep, don't interfere with weight gain, don't have a negative contributing effect to my physiological well-being. And I have a choice now that I have, a little wider variety than I used to have, because I've investigated it long enough. I've used your books as guidelines for what the result of this, the intake of this food at this time can be, and found a fairly good formula that works for me now that doesn't affect it. But people don't study this. and your opening remarks about us being more bacteria than we are what we would consider to be normal human DNA causes us to realize that bacteria, and this was proven in a TED study, bacteria has an internal communication system.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Bacteria talks to each other and sends a signal to other bacteria that is in the same family, and will cause it, while it may be universally spread across your body, it will rally its forces to a single location, which would cause infection. All right?
Yeah.
Because there's an opportunity. And so, because bacteria has this ability to communicate location and opportunity, we have to treat bacteria as either a way of constantly sending it good signals saying, nothing to see here, everything's okay, stay where you are, and then talk to the bacteria we want to say, hey, the flora, the fauna, the good probiotic bacteria, the gut bacteria, the good gut bacteria, that we want to eat foods that send a signal to that dispersed bacteria, hey, gather here and help break this down so that the nutrients can be released. So the bacteria can work for us or against us if we understand that it actually communicates.
That's right, and it's a big time important fact that we think the brain is like your first brain. It's like the brain communicates with everything. But in reality, there's multiple times more signals that get sent from the digestive tract up to the brain. And people have called the GI system the second brain. I think that there's a lot of discussion right now is maybe it's our first brain, because the amount and the volume of the signals getting sent, as I call it, up versus down. And this is a unique unfolding science as we speak, and it's funny to think about what we might know in 2 years. And now it's just exciting to be on the cutting edge of this stuff and having discussions like this that make people think and make people question what we thought we knew, because we always need to be careful to not only learn things but not be afraid to unlearn things. That's really key, because we get locked in the more we do. And then obviously you mentioned metabolism. That's huge. Just two little pieces of statistical data. After about 25 years of age, we lose, naturally speaking, 1/2 pound of lean body mass. Now, that could be bone or muscle. That correlates at the same time simultaneously with 1/2% loss in basal metabolic rate, which is your metabolism. So how do we speed our metabolism up, i.e. use energy more efficiently per capita, is we maintain lean body mass, which means we have to move. And what do we do less as we age? We move less. So this whole concept of aging well and gracefully it needs to be redefined, quite frankly, and we need to do better at learning this stuff and putting it into practice so that we can have an optimal life.
Well, we're talking to Dr. Mark Sherwood, and hopefully we'll be joined by Dr. Michele Sherwood, but both of them together in medical practice at the Functional Medical Institute, fmidr.com. They've got 3 great books out on the market, and all of them will help you. Plus, they're available for working a plan with you using telemedicine and doing consultations with you online, as well as providing you excuse me, with several tools on their website for you to assess where you are and take a look at some of your own behaviors. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about timing and how food affects sleep, exercise, your immune system. Is there a correlation between foods that are age specific? What I ate in my 40s, can I eat in my 70s? interactions with medications and supplements, how food impacts pre-existing medical conditions, expectation management, and length of time to see results. I think this is a very critical subject, that we are an instant society, and if we don't see instant results, we don't stick with it, and this is something that takes time. And what the biblical model is, in light of all of this, that it does line up with the biblical model. So interesting that one of the greatest factors in all of this is this circadian clock that God implemented in all of us, that the day began in the evening, and it was evening until the 24-hour period, but evening into morning, and how we've adjusted that and become so dependent on light. I know that my life is the time of year when the sun breaks the horizon, I wake up. No matter where in the world I am. The moment there's light appears, I wake up. It could be 5 o'clock in the morning, it could be 8 o'clock. I wake up based on that. And knowing that and the rhythm that God has implanted in all of us, that does have to do with the celestial, the moon, the sun, the stars, the light, all of that, not from a New Age perspective, but from a trigger perspective, plays an important part in all of this. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about what to eat and when we should eat it, and what we can expect the result to be, with Doctors Mark and Michele Sherwood. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, host of Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Revealing Prophecy, seen every week on the Igniting Nation Broadcasting Network. Our daily on-demand programming is available on our Apple and Android apps, and on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. We broadcast live Monday through Friday through our apps, on our website, ignitingnation.com, and on Facebook Live. You can listen daily on our audio platforms on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeart. Our lineup of best-selling authors bring you the most in-depth biblical insights into the most pressing issues of our time, including prophecy, Israel, spiritual warfare, and a wide variety of contemporary Christian issues impacting the body of Messiah around the globe. If you missed the live show, you can always catch up on the Igniting Nation YouTube channel. Follow us on social media and join us as we endeavor to heal the nations with the Word of God.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to study right by my side through the Biblical Truth Library. Imagine having access to over 1,000 hours of audio and video teachings available to you through our website on a subscription basis, or via our Apple and Android apps on an a la carte basis. Whichever method you choose, we promise to deliver new insights into the living Word of God, as seen through the eyes of a Jewish believer. If you hunger and thirst like millions around the world for a deeper walk with God and the revelation of new understanding of the Scriptures, visit ignitingnation.com and click on the Biblical Truth Library, or on any device with our free app. Don't let another day go by without receiving your heart's desire for a new depth of understanding into all of God's Word.
Igniting a Nation is expanding across the globe and healing the nations with the Word of God. As we expand our television ministry, we have added new Apple and Android apps, along with new streaming platforms including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn Radio. Your support keeps us broadcasting live interviews and teachings to cover every challenge facing a believer in these perilous yet prophetic times. In appreciation for your support, we are offering you a special gift. For any donation of $100 or more, we will send you a signed copy of Rabbi Eric Walker's best-selling biblical thriller, The Codist, and The 7 Laws of Abundant Living. You can give online via ignitinganation.com or by check mailed to Igniting a Nation, 115 Brook Highland Cove, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. Make sure to claim your special offer, IAN 2020. Help us keep reaching the uttermost corners of the earth with the good news of Messiah.
Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood, authors of 3 outstanding books on wellness, what to eat, how to eat it, how to live, and develop a personal and practical plan for optimum wellness in your body, mind, emotions, and spirit. Dr. Mark, welcome back, and Dr. Michele, welcome. Good to see you join us for this second half, where we were leading off with talking about what to eat and when we should eat it in this discussion.
Well, I want to make one comment too, because the first half, it's great to have my queen in with me for sure. But first half, you mentioned that idea of weight gain when you put in peanut butter. This is fascinating, and I hope people catch this. We do a lot of these antigen tests here. We're talking food allergies, food sensitivities, and they're different, but the responses are the same. It's inflammation, and so peanuts, just go figure, we see that on the scale of allergies that we're born with many times. It's very common. We see that, we see gluten, we see wheat, we see the casein, which is the protein in dairy, and we see cow's milk. We see almonds quite a bit too, surprisingly. But those are there for whatever reason. And then a lot of times we correlate instantaneous or delayed inflammatory actions, including maybe the scale weight going up, with that immunological allergic response. And so there is some good reason to go deep diving into these things that we eat that are, I'm not saying peanuts are bad, but in some people there can be that response. So you can get that instantaneous weight gain. If that's consistent, it's probably got a lot to do with the immune system responding from an inflammatory place.
It's interesting, and like I said, if I eat it for breakfast, no problem. Lunch, no problem. But if it's that, and on the list I have of good protein items to have before you go to bed, and peanut butter is listed as one of the ones that's higher in protein, and it's the one that it is my Achilles heel. That if I have peanut butter before bedtime, no matter if I burned 1,000 calories during the day, riding the tractor and clearing the 7.5 acres in the back, and just being worn to the bone from it, driving the tractor, that 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is going to, regardless of the, it should be 3 pounds lower because I'm drinking, I'm not eating for the hours that I'm on the tractor. I'm not eating 9,000 calories or 13,000 calories to cause a weight gain, but yet 190 calories of peanut butter at bedtime will cause a 1 pound increase in the scale. Does not matter what I have done prior to that. And that's just my metabolism.
Well, and you always make sure that your peanut butter is just peanuts and salt.
Yeah.
And there's no other added ingredients to the peanut butter?
No, When it comes to peanut butter, I've tried the runny, stirry, oily, mixedy, natural, and if you're a kid that grew up in the 50s and you're either a Peter Pan or a Jif, you're going to stick with the Jif, and it's the mother's choice, and that's the way it is. I've tried the almond butters, I've tried them all, and I still go back to I know they're supposed to be better for me, but you know what? Everything else I eat is better for me. That's the store-bought brand, and you know what? At this age, and like I said, I tried them all. I really did. The cashew butters, the almond butters, the natural, the one where you make it yourself, and it's just peanut butter.
Peanuts and salt.
Yeah.
And they just didn't cut it. Okay.
I would bet probably in your case, there's probably, there could be in that mixture a little bit of a mix of some sort of a sugar, that's in there somewhere, and that probably is indeed spiking cortisol, which spikes insulin, which spikes that sort of resistance to lose fat. So that's probably got something to do with that would kind of correlate well with the timing, right? And the cortisol response from a physiological standpoint, I use this this model again right here. This is 5 pounds, and we'll slap it, it feels that way too, right? But the bottom line is, when you have that excess fat buildup, it creates a hormonal nightmare in your system. So you might talk about what it does to leptin and then what it does to thyroid.
Well, of course, it's going to alter leptin as you put on more fat cells. Leptin is produced in the fat cells. More leptin is going to equal leptin resistance, just like too much sugar equals insulin resistance. If you have a lot of fat, you create all this leptin, and then you get cellular resistance to leptin. And leptin should be an appetite satiety signal. However, if it gets to a certain level, your brain can no longer hear that signal. So that turns down the voice. And then when leptin's voice has gone down, it tells the thyroid that it needs to go to sleep. So now you're no longer metabolic. Your body's just kind of on this state of idle, and I need to preserve and hang on to everything.
And that, my friends, is how you can really crash your metabolism, by putting on excess weight, eating too much, and it's an endless cycle. You're going to go to your doctor, and you're going to say, Doctor, I'm hypothyroid. I know it because I'm freezing cold in my fingers and toes, and I have constipation, I have dry skin, and my hair's falling out, and I have no energy, and I have brain fog. But it all boiled down to the accumulation of fat, the accumulation of leptin, and now you got this metabolically created nightmare that happens in all of us, and that begins to affect all your hormones, because then you'll have the sex hormones decline at that point. So it's a unique interconnected pathway we have in our body. Everything connects with everything, and it all starts with what we put in our mouth. Really, I mean, these nutrients are signaling molecules that create the flow of these pathways. And so if we just remember that, like Hippocrates said, let food be thy what?
Medicine.
There you go, right? He knew what he was talking about.
Be thy food.
That's it.
As people age, there are those things which fall into that inflammatory category, and that's the triggers for arthritis, for degeneration, joint degeneration, brittle bones, loss of calcium, lots of factors. And it wasn't up until a couple of years ago that I went to change an air filter, and for the first time in my life I thought about maybe I should call somebody to climb up on the ladder, because I don't want to deal with a broken hip. Yeah. And it's just this framing of I live in a neighborhood with several older people. Somebody's always falling. There's an ambulance in front of somebody's house, and I know that these are not isolated instances that they're not exercising, they're not walking, they haven't strengthened their core, they've lost their sense of balance, not because of age, but because of age inactivity and because of diet and any kind of discipline. So if we want to age well, we have to pay attention to not just what we eat, but what we eat that interacts with what other things, other conditions exist. So if we have a diabetic condition, we need to pay attention. In most cases, it's stage 2 and would reverse itself if you lost the weight, increased the exercise, and changed the diet. But
Yep.
most people just take the pill or the shot, and that's the answer. And I find that the standard medical practice just supports that as being the regimen because people are so reluctant to change or stick with the program. How do we break that model? Because I think that's really the key.
There's a couple things we need to think about. First of all, is we need to realize that these conditions that you just spoke of, they're not conditions that are supposed to happen. In other words, we have them, but it wasn't supposed to happen. So we've been brainwashed to believe this is part of normal aging processes, and it's simply not. We got to get out of this concept too, Rabbi Eric, that insurance, the way it's built now based upon a for-profit sick population model, that's not going to help you get out. It's not supposed to. So don't have an unrealistic expectation. As you age, there is an intolerance, less tolerance. There's an immunological decline. I mean, clearly there's a melatonin production decline. There's bone building decline. There's muscle building decline. That happens. So you got to be a little smarter with it, and don't just roll over and just say I'm dead. I got to stop. This is predetermined. That's nonsense. Would you agree with that?
Right. I mean, aging and frailty are two different things. You don't have to become frail as you age. You don't have to be riddled with chronic disease as you age, but it does take consciousness and it does take involvement in being mindful of your nutritional habits, what's at the end of your fork. It does take mindfulness with activity. I mean, how do you keep the heart strong? You've got to work it aerobically, at aerobic capacity. You've got to work the muscular system. What puts minerals in the bones is it's the pull of the tendons on the bones that say, hey, we've got to start getting to work here. We need some mineral signal in these bones, and it starts pulling it in from the vascular system to the bones. And we are our own worst enemy. If we are not paying attention and putting good fuel into the temple, it's going to decay quicker, faster, and we're just going to be living. We're not going to be living with vitality. And we wouldn't put sugar in the gas tank of our motor vehicle, would we?
No.
I mean, it's not going to get you down the street, yet we just have such a hard time breaking off the concept. If sugar is the problem, it's got to get out of the cupboard. It's got to get out of the refrigerator. It's got to get out of the household and never come back.
Yeah, I think one thing to add too, you mentioned something earlier about all the medications that people are on. I mean, we don't realize the nutrient depletions that are created by the medication. We have a program we use here a lot that we put in all the medications and it spits out all the nutrient depletions. It's amazing. And no wonder we're tired. No wonder we're running out of gas. No wonder we're losing bone, gaining fat, getting brain fog, and getting, hormonal imbalances and gut dysbiosis and all that. It's a really interesting interactive package. And I think it starts really from just redoing our brain and just thinking differently and believing that, like we said, that just like Dr. Michele just said, that aging doesn't have to be a negative experience at all. It can be quite positive. Let's have the mindset of Caleb, if we will.
I completely agree, and I'm on board, and I'm doing what I'm told, and As a matter of fact, because I'm in the 3rd month of the collagen, I've had to increase my frequency of haircuts because
There you go, man. That's awesome.
my hair is growing faster, so I've had to move it up a week. And I went last week, and she said, "Well, you're a week early." And I said, "Hey, they got me adding these 2 scoops of collagen and hair, nails, skin, all that changing, and it's now 3 months into it, so I'm starting to see some effects from it, and that was one of them, was that my hair is growing faster." We've been talking to Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood, as we do on the 3rd Thursday of every month, the 11 o'clock hour, as we talk about wellness. Wellness as the Bible defines wellness, not as wellness man defines it. That we look at the long lives, productive lives, the active lives, the long age. We look at the foods that the Bible tells us to eat and the lifestyle that we're called to live. We can model it in modern day society. It looks a little bit different. The clothing's different. The landscape's different, but the body is still the same, created in the image of God, and is to be fed and treated properly. And we are to be good stewards of this body that God has given us. And the Sherwoods have laid out a great program. You can connect with them at fmidr.com. Mark and Michele, always great to be with you, and look forward to seeing you right back here next month.
We can't wait. Thanks for having us.
Look forward to seeing you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.